In our previous episode of Market Journal, we discussed corn seedling diseases with Nebraska Extension's Tamara Jackson-Zims. This week we'll look at soybeans. The USDA will give its first update on soybean planting progress in Monday's release. As a look ahead to problems growers might notice when plants emerge, we recently talked with Nebraska Extension plant pathologist Loren Giesler to discuss disease issues.
You know, we're starting to see that when they start to emerge, there's a few common seedling disease problems that we see. And each year in Nebraska, we'll see your pythiums, phytophthora, rhizoctonia, fusarium. You know, the most common when we got a lot of rain is going to be our pythiums and phytophthora. So if that seed's going in the ground and then the next week you get a lot of rain, that's where you're going to want to look for those. Those are our water molds that we talk about. So, you know, your fine textured soils, your fields with any history of phytophthora stand issues, you know, that's where I expect to see that. Now, with warmer soil temperatures, you tend to see more phytophthora activity, but you can see pythium cool to warm. So that's the first one I'd look out for anywhere we've got areas with rain after seeding or wet conditions. The other one then that we look at, you know, we'll tend to see some rhizoctonia and fusarium, and of those two I'd say rhizoc. So we're still a little bit early for rhizoctonia, but as it continues to warm up and we start seeing planting going into our sandier areas in the state particularly, that's where we tend to see some rhizoctonia develop. And with all of those, these are all things that seed treatments will significantly help. If we have anybody that's used a seed treatment and they're having a stand problem, you know, we're still early to see this, but you know, a week from now, 2 weeks when that's coming up, we start seeing significant stand problems if they use the seed treatment. It's a good indication that they may be dealing with phytophthora if they're in those wetter areas.
Walk me through the scouting process when the soybeans start to pop up, some things that might show or indicate signs of problems.
Well, you know, one thing that's a good clue is looking at cotyledons on that young plant. So when that plant emerges and those cotyledons come out, that's that food source that's going on and really feeding that plant initially, and it's kind of its first photosynthetic machine that's working. When you start to see plants where those are yellowing or dropping off, that's a good indication that that seedling's going down. In fact, that's what I do when I'm scouting a field, is I'll go through the field, look for any plants that are dropping cotyledons, and then you can dig those plants up, and many times you can find a little bit of root rot or something going on. The other thing is you may see just areas devoid of any plant, and you know, then you're dealing with, you know, an pre-emergence damping off. With it, if conditions are right, that can happen many times. So really from early on, from just that seed originally starting to germinate, you know, until it's out of the ground, until we get probably about to the 3-4 leaf stage, you know, we're susceptible to those seedling diseases and those early season problems.
If you're in a replant situation, is that a situation where you would use seed treatments or start to think about operating any differently than you did the first time?
Well, there's two things there. So, you know, if it's a replant because of a stand problem that was because we were in cooler soil temperatures and we're dealing with pythiums and things that are more problems when we've got some stress, rhizoctonia even, then sometimes you can get away with just, you know, if soil temperatures are warm by the time you replant, let's go ahead and just put it in the ground, it's going to be fine. The one that I see that can be a significant problem is when you're dealing with phytophthora, though. Because with phytophthora, you got a lot of plants maybe that were killed, you got a lot of inoculum, or you got a lot of the fungus present, right? So you go and you plant right down that row again, you're really setting that up for potential failure. So you really want to make sure, if you're dealing with phytophthora, I would sure use a seed treatment all the time. But if you're dealing with some of those others, soil temperatures warm up, I'm not as worried about using a seed treatment.
How important is it to document these problems for future seasons?
It's critical. I mean, it's critical because any of these, you know, you're looking at really prescriptions for each of these. And also, as we go forward with the technologies that are developing, it is becoming more and more critical. Even zones in the field are going to become managed with these problems, yes and no. So documentation, correct identification, you know, as these plants are coming up and you have problems, if a person's not certain of the identification of the problem, make sure they're using that plant and pest diagnostic clinic that's at the Lincoln campus. You know, they can easily send those in and get a diagnosis, at least of what they can find in the sample.
On the Market Journal website, we'll link to more information about phytophthora, root, and stem rot.